access 24/7. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America. If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to favorite song by the Stones, The Satisfaction. And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo, former writer, full-time observer, joined by former six-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch. Jack, I know we're going to talk a lot of boxing, but I know you're a football guy, and those 1 o'clock games yesterday all came down to the wire except the Philly-Cincinnati game. What a Sunday.
Oh, Frank?
Go ahead. I hear you.
Yeah, Glove Fist logo up there, but I can't see you. Someone make believe we're talking by radio or talking by phone. Same conversation. There I go. Now I see you now. Now I came back on. But more so than that, we didn't ask our producer, Mac, before the show what he's going to be watching tonight. Mac is a Yankee fan, a big Yankee fan, and he's a big New York football Giant fan. They're playing the same time. The Giants are playing the Steelers and Monday Night Football, and the Jets are, the Yankees are playing Game 3 of the World Series, down 2-0 in a virtual must-win type situation. What is Matt going to be watching? Is he going to wimp out and is he going to go channel?
He's going to watch the Yankees, Jack.
Right. A real
because the Giant season is over.
Well, some people are saying that about the Yankees, down 2-0.
But the Yankees, if they win tonight, it's not over.
Well, if the Giants upset the Steelers, in that NFC East, it's not over then. Then all of a sudden, they got a glimmer of hope there.
He'll probably flip back and forth.
But Frank, okay, before we talk to boxing, just give us a quick update on your Miami Dolphins, and then we can start with the boxing talk.
They're dreadful. They need a coach, they need a quarterback, and they need a new GM. And I said before the season that the loss at the Chiefs last year in the playoffs would be the high water mark of the Tua McDaniel era. Now I saw today the fans are calling for McDaniel to get fired.
Well, they call
two seasons and how many games in? 5 games in? 7 games in?
How come in boxing we never call for a promoter to be fired? There's no such thing as firing a promoter, but being
because we have no say on that in the team sports, Jack. The management and the ownership listens to that, and they worry when the fans are upset. In boxing, the fans just don't have the juice like they do in other sports. And the only thing they can do is not tune in. And the people in power know that the boxing fans are going to turn in. If you give it a decent fight, we're going to turn in because we're junkies and we just need the next fix. And most of us have been like that our whole life pertaining to that sport.
Right. Well, this past weekend, there was a fight. I won't call it a major fight, but Jack Catterall against Regis Prograis. Catterall, as expected, won a decision with room to spare. I think virtually everyone gave that as a prediction. Catterall by a clear decision. Any other prediction than that would have been a little bit bold. Prograis actually got off to a decent start. He was firing some really good punches. And there were moments early in the fight I thought, could he have regained his old form? Might he actually spring an upset here? Because he was bothering Catterall a lot. But then Catterall took over, displayed uncharacteristic power by knocking Prograis down. At the end of the fight, Prograis said, 12 rounds is too long for me. I'm thinking of going into bare knuckle fighting. He was serious as something else. But then Prograis said something very interesting. And I think he said it because he meant it. He wasn't just trying to be nice. He said Jack Catterall is the best fighter he's ever been in with. And he was in with Devin Haney. He was in with Josh Taylor. It's okay to say Catterall's better than Josh Taylor because he has gotten the better of him in the 2 head-to-head fights, even though officially it's 1 apiece. But to rate him ahead of Devin Haney,
I think based on power, Jack, that's all. Haney never hurt him, but he clearly outboxed him, and you could make a case he may have won the fight by a slightly larger margin. But I don't think it's a type of victory that that takes a fighter's heart away, where he doesn't feel outmanned. He just feels that the other guy maybe just was the better guy skill-wise, a little quicker. He didn't get outmanned by Haney, and he did by Catterall down the stretch, and I think that's the difference. He may even respect Catterall more because he fought. These guys are, Jack, these tough guys that like to trade and fight. When they lose to a fancy Dan, a pretty boxer, they usually don't give him credit. They respect the rough and tough guys a little bit more.
So now Eddie Hearn, he's trying to get Teofimo Lopez to come over to England, fight Catterall. And I know if I'm Lopez, it's not that appealing a fight to me unless they're going to pay me big
a lot of money.
But the fight that Lopez wants Teofimo far beyond anything else is Ryan Garcia. Even if Garcia gets double the money you're getting a massive payday in that fight. And you have a good chance of winning it if you're Teofimo Lopez. It's a very winnable fight.
Would they fight? That would be at 140, right?
Well, yeah, they could both fit in that weight, but Garcia, you get the feeling would, maybe having the contract 142, 143, and he might come in over the weight. Who knows? But that they would work that out.
I hate that.
But each guy has to fight someone, and Garcia's going to be off his suspension in April, but they can sign for the fight before then and just set an April date. And all is fine. It's
funny, and both guys have talked Terrence Crawford too, Garcia and Lopez.
Crawford's got to fight someone, Frank, and why not Teofimo? I mean, who else is he going to fight? Teofimo move up to 147, maybe catch weight at 150 because he's a big guy. I mean,
but could he do that? Could Crawford really fight Teofimo or Garcia at 147 and save face? Because I'm a big Crawford fan. If he's fighting at 147, there's only one name.
Yeah, well, Boots is
and that's fighting. Boots.
Yeah, Boots is fighting in a couple of weeks. And
a rematch against a guy whose name I can't say.
Right, and then Boots is going to kind of he'll get the momentum in his career going again. He should get it after November 9th. But, once in a while, fighters like Boots Ennis, great talents, they win a fight, they win it decisively, but they lose momentum. And how much?
Because they sit around too long.
No, not well. It's a performance in the ring that's flat. It happened with Shakur Stevenson against Edwin De Los Santos. He turned in a flat performance, and all of a sudden, all the momentum of Shakur Stevenson hounding these big names, he kind of lost that momentum.
It dissipates.
Speaking of that, Shakur Stevenson said Lamont Roach is a serious threat to Tank Davis. He said, mark his words. He's like a serious threat. He could really fight. I don't have a good read on Lamont Roach. Do you think?
Jack, I haven't seen enough of him either to say that, but the fact that Stevenson is saying that means nothing to me, because I know fighters all have an agenda, and I think that that's just Shakur playing around, trying to mess with Tank a little bit. I don't take any heed in that.
But then you look bad. But then he looks bad. If Tank dominates, then Shakur's aware. He loses a little credibility as a.
He can always say the guy wasn't as good as I thought.
No,
I don't think he loses sleep over misreading a fighter.
Speaking about not as good as we thought, and not as good as people hoped, I should say, on the undercard of Cadwell Prograis. Well, what's his? Oh, Hatton. Oh boy, not Matthew Hatton. No.
Matthew Hatton.
No, Matthew Hatton's Ricky's brother.
Okay.
The first name, I can't believe it. I always remember his name, but Ricky Hatton's son lost to Jimmy Flint for the second time in a row. He lost the decision. That he was trained by his uncle Matthew Hatton, Ricky's brother, all along. But after he lost to Flint the first time, he got a new trainer. That's what fighters do. He got beaten again the same way the second time around. So this is a question I want to ask you, Frank. With the exception that one name pops into my head immediately, perhaps, of all the fighters who are world champions, a lot of them have had sons who've taken up boxing. How many sons have been better than the dads? Champions or top contenders. I could think of Corey Spinks was a little better than Leon, perhaps, marginally, perhaps. But of all the sons, can you think of anyone who actually...
Was Ray better than Lenny Mancini?
Lenny was a contender, but in fairness to Lenny Mancini, his career was cut short and he was a contender. So Lenny may have actually been the better fighter. We'll never know. He wasn't given quite the chance to prove it completely. But that's a good one, But who else? I mean, it's hard to think, Think of any, off the top of my head.
I can't think of anyone where the son was better. Where in other sports, you can think of that. Barry was better than Bobby Bonds. Griffey Jr. was better than his senior.
You're flaunting all your sports knowledge, Frank, but I don't think that is here in the sport of boxing, which makes you kind of wonder why. I mean, even ordinary fighters, like ordinary champions, like we see, for example, Kostya Tszyu. Tszyu isn't going to, now it's apparent he's never going to get to his dad's level. Even if he somehow could rebound and win the title, he'll never be at Kostya's level.
Oh, Mayweather was better than his father.
I said contenders and champions. Floyd
Senior was a contender.
I'm sure you could dig something up and show.
He made the top 10.
He was never thought of as a contender. Come on, Frank. He wasn't a genuine contender. There was never any talk of Floyd Sr. fighting for a world title, of being anywhere close to that.
Had he beat Sugar Ray Leonard, there would have been talk of it.
That was an 8-round fight. It wasn't like they were contenders. Leonard was the up-and-coming guy. Mayweather Sr. was the journeyman, even though he may have had a decent record at the time. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think he only had 2 losses at the time.
Now, if you were going to say, like if he was Roger Mayweather's son, that would be another matter. Okay, but it's an interesting.
Shane Mosley's son isn't as good as him. Shane Jr. not as good as his father.
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, these guys.
Chavez not as good as his father.
No,
I mean, it's almost a crime to say them in the same sentence. I got you. I'm trying to think who else.
Yeah, it's just
I guess Corey Spinks may be the best, and I guess he was better than Leon was.
marginally. Let's call him marginally. You can make a case if you want. You want to know something? You can make a case that Leon was better if you count the amateurs, him winning a gold medal. If you want to throw in this whole thing, amateur and pro, yeah, and the idea that he beat
Leon just has that great win over Ali that Corey can't come close to.
Right. So you can maybe make an argument that arguably no one that you could off the top of my head that I could think of.
How about brothers? Ray Patterson was not near the fighter that Floyd was.
Buddy Bear, not quite what Max Bear,
Mike Quarry, not as good as Jerry.
Wait. Vladimir, it's about in Vitaly pretty.
That's
equal.
a toss-up.
Yeah.
How about the Virouette brothers? Edwin was better than Adolfo.
Right, and the Judah brothers. Judah had a younger brother, won a state title, not as good as him. And it's just like, interesting.
Myron and Meldrick Taylor. Meldrick was definitely better.
Yeah.
Well, I saw Myron fighting the amateurs, Jack, and he was a killer back in the day. In the mid to late 70s, as an amateur, he won every tournament. He had hand problems, but he was really good. He didn't get. Why didn't he go to the Olympics? It might have been because of the '80 boycott. He might have made the team. I forget.
Who's this?
Myron Taylor.
Oh, I didn't know he was that good of an amateur.
No, he was outstanding.
He didn't make the '80 Olympic team. No,
I don't think he did.
But they did have they did go through the whole thing, the box offs, the trials, and the whole thing. They just didn't participate in the games. You kind of wonder who was hurt the most in that by the boycott 1980, who could have participated, maybe made a big bang. I can't think of anyone in particular. Like
James Schuler made the junior middleweight. He probably would have been favored to win the gold. He was that good as an amateur, but he did have a pro career, and until he ran into a Tommy Hearn's right hand, it was very promising.
But that's what would have happened.
Virgil Hill was 84.
Silver medal.
Right. James Broad would have been the heavyweight representative in 80.
He wasn't. But these guys, if one or two of them would have been fortunate enough to win the gold medal, they would have been exposed as pros. They wouldn't have gotten the television deal that Sugar Ray Leonard and Howard Davis got. They were big at the time. Even Mike Spink, he wasn't even going to turn pro, and he was on Leon's coattails, basically.
And Leonard had doubts about turning pro, too.
Yeah, well, Leonard was in high demand, But interesting thing. Yeah, interesting question. Last what day is it? It's October 29th. Wait, 28th today, right? Saturday was the 26th. Saturday, October 26th is always a magic day, anniversary date in boxing, because two major heavyweight fights took place. Kind of fights / events. Ali's comeback after the layoff against Jerry Quarry. That was an event, not just a fight, a magical event. And then, of course, historically, it's extremely important. Rocky Marciano in the ring with Joe Louis, two all-time legendary champions, and Marciano ending Lewis's career in the 8th round. And both fights, really remembered. Which one had a greater impact on boxing history?
Boy, Jack, you had mentioned that, and I was thinking about that, and it's just so tough because with Marciano and Lewis, we didn't know then that Marciano was going to be an all-time great, and going into the fight, we didn't know it would be the last time that Lewis would ever fight. In the Ali Quarry fight, if Ali doesn't come back and he never fights after Zara Foley, I mean, who knows what the heavyweight division looks like and what becomes of history? I mean, it's very hard to say. I'll say this. I'll say Marciano and Lewis for two reasons. For one main reason, they're both all-time greats. Ali's an all-time great, but Quarry's not. So I guess that's kind of the tiebreaker. Ali and Quarry both fought after that fight. In fact, they fought again. Lewis, we never saw again. That was the fight that convinced him that he was done and it was over. And I know you saw the post I put up about that fight. And I just read, Jack, what Joe Louis had said shortly after that fight and how much praise and respect did he thought of Marciano. So Marciano, who I think gets underrated today, I think it carries a lot of weight with me, Jack, that Joe Louis thought that highly of Marciano. And you know what stuck out to me in that phrase, that paragraph I found that Louis said? He said, he had something to hurt me with. He goes, and I had nothing to hurt him with. And when I watched that fight with Louis and Marciano, you know, Louis had a decent jab, and for maybe 3 or 4 rounds, he kind of kept Rocky off him a little bit, but Jackie had no right hand to follow it. And when he hit Rocky with the right hand, Rocky just walked right through it like it was a raindrop. And the fact that Louis said, I had nothing to hit him with, tells me that everything we saw was exactly what Louis experienced during that fight. So I'm going to say that Marciano and Louis is probably a bigger fight because even though Ali, the return was big, we still talk about Marciano and Louis today in that fight. I don't think we talk about Ali and Quarry as much other than maybe on the anniversary.
Yeah, Ali Quarry was huge when it took place. It was one of the biggest fight/events in boxing history, but it was the type of fight/event when it was over, we all moved on. It wasn't so historical. Okay, Ali returned to the ring. It may as well have been against Jimmy Ellis or whatever, or Floyd Patterson or George Chuvalo, his comeback fight, for all it means now. Because when we think of Ali in the historical context, we think of Joe Frazier, Sonny Liston, George Foreman, and then we build gently around there, around that.
But Jack, we're talking about history, though. If Ali doesn't come back, he has no second career. I mean, and that fight was the launch pad for his second career.
It's big.
So if you look back historically, I mean, if Ali's a consensus all-time greatest heavyweight champ, at least if we go by Ibro, I mean, then that career, Ali would not be considered the GOAT, Jack, if he never came back.
Okay, Ibro's great, but I don't always look at it. So they have Ali as the #1 heavyweight of all time, correct?
Ali is 1 and Louis is 2.
Okay, now, what I'd love to see Ibro do, make believe there wasn't a second coming of Ali, and he couldn't box again after the Zora Foley fight. Let's say he was found guilty, he went to jail 5 years and wouldn't come back after 5 years. Where would he rate amongst the great heavyweights of all time? I mean, how would we look at him?
Nat Fleischer didn't have Ali in the top 10 after that fight. Jack, I don't know, because we could say him being undefeated would carry a lot of weight. And a lot of historians and analysts would say, and he was taking out before he really had a prime. That would carry a lot of weight. But if you look at his record, his best win is against Liston, and at least one of those 2 fights is tainted.
Yeah, so we don't know. I mean, but we don't know how the younger generation would have looked at Ali. They get the old tapes, seeing YouTube, the way he talked, figuring he's the coolest guy. Why didn't he fight more? This. Who knows? I mean,
he would have retired 29-0 with 24 knockouts and 9 title defenses.
I think 22 stoppages.
Excuse me?
22 stoppages, not 24.
Well, when he fought Frazier, Jack, he was 31-0 with 25 stoppages, and he had 2 stoppages before that. He had 23 stoppages.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong there. Okay.
So he's 29-0 with 23 stoppages. But I mean, does he get a lot of credit for beating Terrell Chuvalo? Only Liston was a killer.
Yeah, he should be given more credit for that, Ali. When you look at all the top of the line guys he beat, the non-monsters, his second tier opponents, they were darn good. Ron,
you mean during his first reign?
At first and second, right? Yeah, but we're talking about the first time. Ernie Terrell, a heck of a fighter. He's on the ballot for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. I mean, so
okay, I'll play devil's advocate like you like to play. He did lose to Cleveland Williams. I forget who else. Did he have another loss? How many losses did he have going into the Ali fight? I think he had 2 or 3.
Well, he lost the Cleveland Williams fight. I don't remember.
Then he beat him in a rematch. Chuvalo had a handful of losses when he fought Ali. Zora Foley had been destroyed by Liston, years earlier, prior to that. Who else did Ali fight Cooper lost to Patterson, wouldn't go near Liston. London lost to Patterson. So a lot of the guys he defended against were beaten conclusively by other guys. I think Liston would be the only fight, Jack, that they would look at and say, and look, during that first Liston fight, I think it's one of Ali's best fights of the 60s.
Yeah, but it's all hypothetical. He did have this second career, and we know how it turned out. I was at a fight show, Frank, last Wednesday night at Madison Square Garden, and there was a women's IBF bantamweight title between the American, her last name is Metcalf. I'm not so big into women's boxing, I know I'm good with the females fighting, but I'm not knowledgeable, because there's not that many female fighters out there. So, like, you could look at a men's world ratings and recognize the names and have an opinion, but the women, it's different. She fought Metcalf, a Japanese girl, Yoshida. Metcalf had beaten her on a close decision prior to that, but then Yoshida became a world champion. She stepped in at short notice and dethroned the champion. And now she was trying to avenge the loss to Metcalf and defend her title at the same time. Metcalf got the decision. I thought Yoshida edged it, but once again, it's the scoring that's the controversy. Metcalf was given scores in 96-94, 97-93, and 99-91. And the 99-91, which I thought was outrageous, was scored by Robin Taylor, a very competent judge. And I'm a believer. Judges miss things once in a while. And I'm not sure what she was looking at. The only thing I ask any judge, not just Robin Taylor, if your score is questioned and you speak to 10 other people who you respect a lot on their ability to score a fight, and they tell you were way off base, don't tell me the other 10 are wrong and you're right. That would be my only complaint about it.
Did that happen?
After the fight, I heard...
Because I didn't see the fight.
I had 96-94 Yoshida.
6-4 in rounds.
The judge had it 96-94 for Metcalf. Okay, I could see that. 97-93 Metcalf. Come on, it's 7-3 is off the rails. So what happened? Yoshida's manager Keith Sullivan contacted CompuBox because he wanted to get the punch totals, and the punch totals showed that Metcalf threw a lot more punches, but Yoshida landed more. So again, if you're a judge, it's like we went to school, Frank, when you were like in the back of the room falling asleep, your teachers would pass you, Frank, for effort because you'd hand in an extra paper or something. But
that's called a social promotion. Jack, that's called a social promotion, and I got 3 or 4 of those in grade school.
I didn't. I took advantage of those when I could too. So But the point is, how much credit, Frank? This is a good question. Should we give a fighter with a high work rate, but they're not landing punches? They're throwing. Everything is missing. Everything is coming short, but they're working the whole round. And
I think there's something that he said for that.
And the other fighter is only working half as hard, but connecting more and connecting cleaner.
I don't think it's a simple answer, Jack. I have to see the fight, but I do think fighters that try to make the fight should be rewarded, but then the guys that are more efficient should be rewarded also. So I guess it depends on the fight.
Yeah, but there was a little bit of a controversy there at Madison Square Garden, and it was a women's fight, and I thought I'd bring it up because I was there.
Jack, what is it about this year? Because not just boxing, it seems the officiating in all sports this year is off. I mean, it really does. I mean, I haven't watched much baseball, but the college football and NFL football I've watched, the boxing, some of the scores have been off the hook. I mean, I don't know what I don't know what the reason is, but it just seems that we're seeing a little bit more of it lately.
Yeah, a lot of complaining, and a good hypothetical question I wasn't prepared to ask, and I don't know what the answer is. We always would think boxing would be the worst officiated sport in a way because of all the controversy, but is it really? The other sports have guidelines at least, like if a play is held in football, should it get called? Should it not get called?
And they could call that every play. They really could.
Yeah. And in baseball, it's the strike zone. In basketball, there are a lot of questionable fouls. I mean, there's probably
a lot left to interpretation.
Yeah, I'm starting to come to the conclusion, Frank, for the first time ever, after following boxing my whole life, I think I'm gonna be okay with open scoring finally. I mean, the only reason not to have open scoring, because one of the beauties of boxing is the suspense, waiting for the decision. But some of these decisions are so darn bad. Let's forget the suspense and maybe make the scorecards public. They say after every 4 rounds. Why not after every round?
They did that in the Ali Shavers fight.
Right. And Angelo Dundee used it to their favor. He had an idea what was going on. And is there anything wrong that a fighter who knows he's up 2 points going into the last round has a prevent defense? They do it in football. I mean, no,
I can't. Look, the name of the game is to win. And if that's what you have to do to win, I don't have a problem with that. I don't. Yeah. I want to live the fight the next day, as George Bent would say. And look, if I'm up 3 points going into the last round, why am I going to give the other guy a chance to win the fight the only way he can by going in there and trading with him and giving him a shot to clip me?
How do you feel about they tried it a little bit in boxing years ago? It was an experiment they did away with. In overtime, if I won't end in a draw, you have an additional round.
I love that.
But
yes.
How do you feel about this, Frank? Let's get creative. You and I are making up the rules. We decided after 12 rounds, there's an overtime, but we give them a 5-minute rest period. Because
Jack,
and then they have the 1 round.
That's fine too. Whatever you want to do. I think it should just be a continuation of the fight and they add the extra round. I do think so I'm not crazy about the 5-minute rest, but I think that the fighter should know going in, this is a 12-round fight. If it ends in a draw, you better be ready to go 13. Okay, and let me just say hi to our buddy out there, Little Holmes. He's a big Larry Holmes fan. Gentlemen, do you have a favorite referee in history?
Yeah, I do. I liked Arthur McCanty Sr. He always seemed to be in control of his fights. So yeah, I enjoyed. Yeah.
I liked McCanty, but I think Larry Hazard was one hell of a referee too.
Yeah, he was good. There are a number of good refs. I mean, New York, Ron Lipton, I thought was a good ref. He had came some criticism at times. Audie Jr. had some controversy swirling around him, in the past. We talked about father-son fighters.
I like Smoker too, but he also had some issues too.
Smoker was good. Smoker was
and
good.
Mills Lane was. I like that little Holmes Mills Lane.
Yeah, sometimes a ref gets his reputation on something he shouldn't. Mills didn't do a good job in the Holyfield-Tyson rematch. When a fighter gets part of his ear bit off, the fighter doing the bite.
He shouldn't have given him a second shot.
No. Imagine Tyson then knocked Holyfield out after biting off a little part of his hair. Come on. I mean, but Mills was a good referee. I mean, Mills was.
And
good.
what you want firm and fair.
What I like about Smoker, let me tell you, and Smoker passed away, and I get the feeling
About a year and a half ago.
Smoker, right? Yeah. I mean, what Smoker did, what was good. We were talking about the Zab Judah Costa fight. When Judah was hit by the shot, wobbling around, I didn't think that fight should have gotten stopped when it did because it was an equilibrium punch. There's a big difference involved. Smoker told me at ringside right after he reffed the first Shane Mosley Vernon Forrest fight when Mosley got knocked down twice. He let it continue, went to distance. He said Zab should have been allowed to continue. It was an equilibrium punch. There's a difference between a guy really being hurt or just having to get his balance back. I mean, I hate when they say the guy, well, his legs wobbled a little. The guy's not getting hit. So the legs are done, legs will straighten out. Can you imagine our favorite fight of all time, Frank? The 11th round of Ali Frazier. Imagine a ref who would have stopped the fight then when Ali he didn't have his equilibrium. He got it together. And then we'll hear this tired argument. Well, his legs didn't look steady. Like that's justification at that moment.
And Jack, you say that, but Arthur McCanny was thinking about stopping that fight. I don't know if you know that.
No, he wasn't. No.
No, he said that he went to the corner, Ali's corner after the 11th round because he wasn't sure. And he said Ali and Dundee were talking as if nothing happened. And he said he realized Ali was okay. And he just butt out.
Oh, I talked with Arthur a couple of times about it. He swore, and I had to tell him otherwise even years later, that he didn't feel Ali was even hurt. He thought Ali was play acting the whole time. Ali
was hurt, but he ad-libbed it and over-dramatized it.
He didn't feel he was hurt. McCanty told me he thought Ali conned everyone. I said, no, Arthur, he really was hurt. And he said, you think so? The 15th round was different because Ali, he said, was so exhausted. Sometimes Johnny Lobianco did a good job not stopping Ali's fight with Ernie Shavers when Ali was kind of teeing off at the end. Shavers was kind of in a crouch. I asked him when he was alive, Johnny Lobianco. Well, he had to be alive for me to ask him. What were you thinking of stopping the fight? And he said no, he wasn't even thinking of stopping the fight, which was like a wow. It had to come in his mind because Ali was teeing off on Shavers.
If there was another 30 seconds, he probably stops it.
Right. And, and now watching the Ali Ron Lyle fight, at the time it was stopped. I didn't think it should have been stopped. But
I felt it was the right call.
I feel it was a good stop. It absolutely was.
Jack, what about this one? Little Holmes wants to know about the McCall Lewis first fight. I have no problem with that stoppage. Lewis was hurt. And he almost fell into Octavio Moran's arms when they stopped the fight. I don't think that was a quick hook at all. I think Lewis was hurt, concussed, and that was the right call.
I think it was a quick hook, but I understand where you're coming from. Lewis was badly hurt and dazed, but it wasn't like Lewis was helpless if you let it continue. It wasn't like Lewis was on the ropes, and was wobbling when McCall,
I don't think he gets out of that round at all.
I don't think so either, Frank. But I think, you let it go on a little more. And if Lewis had no legs, as soon as McCall would start attacking again, Lewis would go down again. And sometimes a guy goes down the second time, he gets kind of a reprieve, and maybe he does straighten out. I think Emmanuel Stewart lied to me, but in a good way. Okay, if that's such a good way of lying. While he was handling Lennox Lewis, okay, I asked, and Stewart was McCall's trainer against Lewis.
At that time, yes.
At that time. But then he switched over to Lewis. And I said, well, what do you think would have happened if the referee let the fight continue? Do you think Lewis would have won the fight, Lennox? He goes, yeah, I think he would have come back and won the fight. It's being a good trainer, like pumping his guy. But when talk about a conflict, he was in McCall's corner.
Right.
He said no, but he wanted it, Lewis's image, saying, yeah, I think he would have come back. That was putting him on the spot.
Jack, here's one. And you like hypotheticals. And we forgot about this completely. Tomorrow is the 50th anniversary of Ali Foreman. Did you realize that?
Oh, I didn't, that slipped under the radar to me.
Tomorrow will be 50 years because it was October 29th in the States when that fight started. I have a theory on that fight, and I know I know you'll come at me on it, but just hear me out. Ali wins by an 8th round stoppage. Okay? That's what history shows.
It's a knockout.
Knockout. Okay. Everybody pretty much gave in to the thought that maybe Ali is the GOAT after that fight because the old school guys can't say he can't take a punch, couldn't say that, couldn't say he wasn't tough. So Ali, to me, probably never got the credit as being the GOAT until he beat Foreman. So here's my theory. Had Foreman stopped Ali in the 8th round instead of the opposite, I believe two things happen, and my buddy Holmes is not going to like this. I believe George Foreman goes down as the greatest heavyweight ever, and the Larry Holmes era is never hatched. It never comes to fruition because if Foreman stops Ali, now he has a knockout win over both Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali. There's no heavyweight before him or since that fight that could claim that kind of credibility and that kind of that opposition on their record. And then Foreman, he wouldn't have lost his confidence. He may have even become better than he ever was. And he would have had to fight Larry. Larry Holmes was in position for a title shot by like 1975. And I think in 75, 76, undefeated Foreman who stopped Ali goes through Larry Holmes like a hot knife through butter. And I think that changed history. Had Foreman stopped Ali, he's the GOAT, not Ali.
I want to break that down and tackle it, but I got to correct you on something because I lived through that time and I was old enough to get the feel. I was in boxing gyms. After Ali beat Foreman, very few people were rating him ahead of Joe Louis. When Ali beat Spinks in the rematch, very few people were rating him ahead of Joe Louis because enough people were alive. Louis was then the equivalent of what Ali is now. Very few people are rating any heavyweight ahead of Ali in history right now. That's going to change decades from now. Guys will come along and the talk and the narrative might change, But Ali, when more people started passing away that watched Louis fight, something like that, and people were getting older, Ali was the fighter of their youth, the narrative then changed. But that wasn't the narrative after he beat Foreman.
Jack, then we must have, I was around then at the same time, and I followed that religiously. And I just think we must have been reading different books because after Ali beat Foreman, to me, I remember the talk being, okay, we will now accept him as, okay, let's just say he's in the conversation to be the GOAT, which he never was before that. But when he beat George Foreman, he pretty much silenced all the critics.
Oh, well, yeah, no, it was a monster victory. If you talk about monster victories, the biggest monster victories of all time, the best wins, that's on the short list. That's on the short list. I guess we'll give it to Frazier #1, perhaps. Beating Ali in the
Beating
fight.
him?
Right. But for Ali beating Foreman, yeah, I could see that top 5. I mean, why not? Lewis beating Schmeling, monster victory. But Ali beating Foreman is a heck of a lot more impressive than Lewis beating Schmeling. A heck of a lot.
Okay, Jack, you remember that time, okay? So I have an idea about how old you were at that time. Let me ask you this. We were both old enough at that time. We were in our teens, mid to late teens. Who did you think was going to win going in, Ali or Foreman?
Foreman, I thought, was going to stop Ali. Yeah, it was hard to find people to pick Ali, and it was based on Foreman knocking out Frazier Norton in 2 rounds each, and both of them giving Ali help, both of them beating Ali, and then Ali reversed it in the rematch. I remember Ali before the Norton rematch, he went on tour. That's so funny. Like a politician, he visited different places to promote the upcoming fights.
Right.
Evening, he's outside the movie theater tonight. We went to see him, and he's pumping the crowd up. He says, I'm going to knock out Ken Norton in 4 rounds in the rematch. I'm going to stop Joe Frazier in 6 rounds, and then I'm going to knock out George Foreman in 13 rounds. I remember what he said. Think of it. The Foreman 6-round stoppages over Norton and Frazier weren't so simple. He was pushed to the limit, 1 decisions. And I guess to Ali's mindset, he was thinking taking Foreman very deep into the fight where he'd tire out and then he would do away with him there at that point. Kind of like what Holmes did with Cooney. That's
Jack, I'm gonna throw something at you. It's gonna really throw you off because my memory was like yours as far as didn't seem like many people were picking Ali to win that fight. He was a 3.5 to 1 underdog. I stumbled over this from one of my magazines a couple of years ago. When I read the names to you, I'm going to give you their pick for the fight. Firstly, I'm going to give you the guys, Jim Barniak, Tom Cushman, Bill Kaplan, Dave Anderson, Ed Schuyler, Nat Lobet, and Bud Collins picked Foreman. These are the guys that picked Ali. Bud Schulberg, Ali, TKO 13. Norman Mailer, Ali in the 14th. Jerry Eisenberg, Ali, KO 9. Pete Bonaventure, Ali, KO 7. Bobby Goodman, Ali, KO 10. Murray Goodman, Ali, KO 12. Jim Murray, LA Times, Ali, TKO 9. Colin Hart, The Sun in London, Ali, 11. And Jack Griffin, Chicago Times, Ali decision. I didn't remember that many people picking Ali at that time.
I didn't either. I mean, the real boxing writers / journalists I respect, Bud Schulberg wasn't a boxing guy. He liked boxing. He wrote a couple of movies.
Mailer wasn't a boxing guy either. He was an Ali guy.
Nat Lubay took over Ring Magazine for Nat Fleischer, his father-in-law. And I remember Lou Eskin telling me he was a nice man. He would have been happy owning a tie company, too. He wasn't a boxing guy.
Jerry Eisenberg carries weight.
Jerry is.
Jim Murray carries weight.
I remember Jerry Eisenberg. He was on this thing called Sports Extra, and I remember him talking about the Ali Foreman fight, and he picked Ali to win before they had the delay due to Foreman's cut, the postponement, because he felt Foreman was in bad physical condition, just not in shape. And he thought with the cut, Foreman can now win the rematch. So I wonder when they asked Eisenberg, because I think with the delay, he was switching back to Foreman now because Foreman, he felt was going to come into the ring in really good shape.
I actually felt the cut helped Foreman too, because I think Ali was getting ready. The original date was September 24th, and I thought that Ali was ready to peak on the 24th, and the fact that that 7 days before the fight, for everything to be thrown up and not fight, now he has to go another 5 weeks. I thought that kind of favored Foreman. Now, let me ask you this. I remember there was some thought back then that some people felt the cut was intentional because Foreman wasn't in shape. Do you buy that?
Cut may have been intentional. I could see that happening. He thought he could get out of Zaire, and he would have, I guess.
Do you remember who cut his eye?
He caught an elbow. Was it Bill Murray?
Bill McMurray, yes.
Yeah. He caught an elbow there. And Ali later said it showed him Foreman wasn't invincible. The idea you're supposed to be this monster and you could get cut.
Right.
I think now on reflection, and we didn't think it at the time, Ali always would have beaten Foreman. It was a terrible style matchup for Foreman. If they fought best 4 out of 7, like the World Series, at most Foreman wins one fight, at most. Ali just had his number style-wise, especially.
Jack, can we really say that? Now, I'm going to give you 2 thoughts. One, I disagree with a lot of people that think that Ali outboxed Foreman. Ali had quicker hands, but let's face it, Foreman hit Ali with a ton of shots, and he didn't buckle him or get him down. Okay? It wasn't like Ali was moving like Roy Jones against some of his opponents, or if Foreman couldn't hit him. Ali couldn't get away from him by moving around, so he went to the ropes and he took his punch. So I think Ali more or less out-toughed Foreman more so than he outboxed him, because, look, if you told Foreman going into the fight you're going to hit him this many times, Foreman's going to say, I'm going to win in a knockout and early. That's one. The other thing is, yes, Ali did it that night. What if they would have had a rematch?
Foreman wasn't much after, took a lot out of him. The Foreman in Jamaica that beat Joe Frazier in the first fight, if that Foreman showed up for a rematch, yeah, he's got a shot at beating, an Ali who wasn't going to get better after Zaire. Yeah, of course he has a reasonable chance. But once Foreman got knocked out, the closest he came ever again to being his old self was ironically in the Joe Frazier rematch.
He looked great in that fight, but he owned Frazier.
He looked great. But the point is, let's make believe that was a 4-round fight. He would have won a decision for him, and he actually didn't press the same buttons on Joe quite the same way.
Well, Joe moved away the whole time too. He didn't go to him.
Yeah. But
that made it different. That made a big difference.
But Foreman, if he fought Ali in a rematch, he would probably be trying to conserve energy more.
And Ali can live with that.
Exactly. And if he tries
Ali wins
more, he isn't going to be as overwhelmingly awesome. He's in
a catch-22 against Ali.
Exactly, and it's a terrible thing. I always thought that way with a Hearns-Hagler rematch. Hearns could have fought Hagler 10 times, and he wasn't going to beat him.
He wouldn't beat him?
Wouldn't beat him once, the Marvin Hagler who beat Hearns. But let's say they had a rematch. Hearns would be so mentally messed up because they try a strategy. Oh, I'm going to keep away and try to box him. And it's the same way as Jerry Quarry and Joe Frazier. You want to know something? Quarry's best chance of beating Joe Frazier was always going to be just go head-to-head with him. You're a hell
and hope to catch him.
You could hurt him to the body. Don't stop moving away. He tried to move away in boxing. Afterwards, Joe said, I didn't see where Jerry thought he was going to go. He didn't have the long reach. He's not going to outbox me, But these guys, so Jerry was like mentally, in a way, even though he was confident, I'm sure he had a degree of confidence, he was kind of mentally beaten that he had to switch.
I remember he said before the first Frazier fight, I forget who he told, but he said, look, he goes, fighters know. He goes, and I know I can beat him. And I think he thought because Frazier's right there, he could nail him and take him out. But he just didn't realize the buzzsaw that was going to come at him. Back to Ali Foreman, Jack, you do realize they were close to having a rematch. If Foreman beats Jimmy Young, Ali fights Foreman in September and not Shavers in 77.
That was 77, but I think Ali was looking for Foreman to police Ken Norton because they'd had their third
He
fight.
said that. He openly said that.
And Ali, I thought, it come to the conclusion, I can't beat Norton at this point in my career. I got the decision over him in the last fight. From what I
He didn't want a fourth fight.
I don't think Ali felt he won the third fight, or at the very least, he's thinking to himself, I can't do any better in the fourth fight with Norton. I don't want to know from Norton. Let Foreman knock him out. Okay, again, and he was certain Ali Foreman was going to knock Norton out, and he probably would have.
He would own. He owned Norton.
He owned, exactly. And that would have put Norton out of the way, and then Ali's figuring, I can handle George. That was Ali's strategy to kind of keep things going. But what you were saying before about Foreman being the greatest, had he beaten Ali, he would have run into Larry Holmes at some point. And Foreman, I don't want to say age would have been a factor. Look what he did as an old guy. I think Foreman would have been a dominant champion, knocking guys out. And someone like Larry Holmes, who could box, move, extend them, could have been the guy to upset him, at that point. Even though I think the Foreman in Zaire, who would come if he came at Holmes with the same reckless abandon he did against Ali, it's going to be hard for Holmes to survive that.
And if he beats Ali with that reckless abandon, think how confident he is against Holmes.
But this was Ali. Who's he going to? He wouldn't go after.
No, I'm saying if he would have defeated Ali with a reckless abandon,
but it would have been
and a year and a half he has to fight Holmes.
No. They fought in with They fought in 74. Holmes didn't come into his own really until he beat Norton in June of 78. He wasn't going to fight Holmes for at least 3 more years.
They tried to make Holmes and Foreman in 76. They tried to make that fight, and Richie Giacchetti wouldn't take it. They wanted that fight then because Holmes he was basically beating everybody pretty easy, not looking great, but beating guys easy. He didn't get credit, though, until he fought Shavers, but they wanted the fight. They tried to make the fight with Holmes for Foreman in 76 because they wanted him to fight another guy who fought like Ali to prepare him for a rematch better. And Richie Giacchetti said, I'm not putting Larry in with that animal. And that was the gun-shy Foreman coming off the loss to Ali. But if we look at Foreman's career, Jack, the only guy that ever hurt Foreman or was close to stopping him in either career was Ron Lyle. Even though Ali got a knockout win, that was exhaustion and a couple of nice right hands. Lyle dropped him and hurt him early in a fight, and you could tell it took everything Foreman had to get up from the grave and come back and win that fight.
Foreman wasn't in peak form for the Lyle.
No, it was his first fight in 15 months.
You could tell he was kind of like exhausted, whatever. Joe Frazier was at that fight, and he was smiling. He said, that's not the Foreman that did me in. I'm going to get him next time. And I actually think Frazier, at the top of his game, would have actually beat the Foreman who knocked Lyle out, but he'd never beat the Foreman who stopped him in Jamaica. Joe would never beat that version or come close to beating that version. The Joe of the fight of the century, maybe he would have, given Foreman some, an anxious type of fight, but Foreman,
Jack, I love Smoking Joe. I think he's the coolest heavyweight champ in history. I love his style. I love watching him fight. You take March 8th, Frazier. He's not beating the Foreman that beat him in 76. It's just a terrible matchup for him. I could never pick him over Joe. Over George.
I wouldn't pick him. No, I wouldn't pick him over Foreman. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying, but with the head movement, younger, this, that. I don't think it's an easy fight for Foreman. That's all I'm saying,
Let me ask you this.
We're pretty, Frank.
I understand. We're pretty excited. We get excited when we talk about those fights. Is it because they were the guys of our youth when we first really got into boxing? Or was it just better then and we'll never have that enthusiasm for today? What's your quick answer?
Quick answer, I think because the quality was better. than Fury Usyk. A nice fight, Fury Usyk, the rematch. And I think those fights were easier to make, you know. Fighters fought one another more so than today. They picked their spots less.
Right.